This podcast is supported by Netflix, presenting The Beast in Me. The cat and mouse thriller stars Emmy Award winners Claire Danes and Matthew Rhys. The Guardian lauds it, top-tier television. And Collider raves, The Beast in Me will leave you on the edge of your seat, with powerhouse performances from both Claire Danes and Matthew Rhys. The Wall Street Journal hails it one of the best TV shows of the year. For your Emmy Awards consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Limited Series. I'm Katey Bridge. This is the Prestige Junkie Podcast, and today, Emmy season really is in full swing. All the shows that are eligible now have to have premiered. We are into June, and to talk about a lot of those shows that are in the running, and maybe some that we don't want you to forget, or that we especially love, I am joined by a first-time guest, but long-desired guest on this show, Vulture critic Kathryn van Arendonk, watcher of so much television. Kathryn, are you ready to talk about a lot of TV shows and sway the Emmy votes? I think we have that power, right?
I am so ready to talk about a lot of TV shows. Whether or not we can sway the Emmy votes, we will see.
Yeah, we'll have to keep our power in check and do our best. We'll talk about the shows that we love, the shows we want people to vote for, the Gotham TV winners, which Kathryn had a hand in choosing some of the nominees, and some of the shows that everyone seems to actually be talking about right now. After all of that, you will hear my conversation with Jason Bateman, who is the star of the Netflix limited series Black Rabbit and also the director of the first 2 episodes. We talked a lot about his career as a TV director, which stretches back further than you think, way back into the 90s, and has been a really interesting way for him to build his career on screen. All of that coming and more. Welcome to the show. Kathryn, as I said, I have been reading you writing about TV at Vulture and talking to you on the internet vaguely, and have kind of wanted to have these conversations actually face to face for such a long time. And now there's so much TV to talk about. It feels like perfect timing. Are you drowning in shows to watch at this point, or have you gotten past the flood now that we're into June?
I'm drowning a little bit, but it is because part of why I am drowning is that I have been working on longer term reporting projects. And so whenever that happens, the screeners, inevitably fall by the wayside. I mean, the other sincere reality is I got to the last couple weeks. I was really crunched up against some deadlines, and I was like, do you know what I should do now? I should watch Summer House. I should start Summer House. And so that's really where my brain has been I know I am not alone in that.
No, but you're caught up on a cultural conversation. This is very important, I think.
But then you look at all the rest of TV and you think, oh dear.
Yeah, there's only so many hours in the day. Mm-hmm. We should talk about some of that reporting and deadlines, though, because at this point, I guess it's last week's New York Mag cover story you wrote about Jimmy Kimmel, which has not been the late night host that we've been talking about endlessly. It's kind of been Colbert's moment as his show ended. But I thought your piece did this really interesting job kind of framing Jimmy Kimmel standing as the last man on the wall in some ways. It was just an interesting way to catch up with him. What did you take away from spending all that time with Kimmel, and how are you thinking about his show now?
Yeah, I had the sort of good fortune, actually, of we had been planning to do this profile for a little bit. We knew obviously Colbert would be ending and thought that might be an interesting time to just be, thinking about Kimmel and where he was. And the day that I had already planned on and was there shadowing him happened to then be the Monday after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Mm-hmm. So we all showed up at the studio that morning. I had not met him before, actually. And, Trump and Melania had both started tweeting about him about an hour and a half-ish before everyone showed up for rehearsal. And he walked in the back door and saw me, and he was like, "Hey, so nice to meet you. I'm so happy for you," which was
that's very astute of him to just know that this is kind of a gift being handed to a reporter on his set that day.
Yeah, and although that particular element of that day didn't make it into the piece, I mention it because I think a lot of my read of him is that he is maybe more astute than people who think of him as the host of The Man Show and as guy who does pranks all the time and guy who loves to stand and who cries. I think we have this image of him that is accurate, that is a lot about the feeling Jimmy Kimmel, the kind of sophomoric Jimmy Kimmel. Mm-hmm. And he is all of those things while also having made it as far as he has because of his really effective ability to read a room, to understand all of the ins and outs of how these kinds of Hollywood relationships work. He has a remarkable, very deep network of relationships, and is now in this really strange place where he's been doing this show for 23 years. His contract expires May 2027. He, I think, wants the same thing that Trump wants, which is a really awkward place to be in.
Which is for the show to end?
Yes. I think Trump wants the show to end. And Kimmel is ready. Like, he told me he was, if Biden had been elected, he would have, like, retired from the show.
Or like if Kamala Harris had won.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, but actually, I think when Biden won the first time, he was thinking, like, I'm going to be out maybe. And then Trump came back and he was like, okay, never mind. And then it was like, if Kamala had won, he would have left, but it's okay, never mind. And so now he really is trying to figure out what winding down the show could even look like without it looking like a loss for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, the idea that I think it's been so easy to move on from because the Trump era news cycle is so fast is like back in the fall, like the whole world hinged on Jimmy Kimmel, like being pulled off of ABC. Like he was the most important person on television for a couple days there. And he says this in the piece too, that the idea that like the show is less relevant because of linear TV viewings is really inaccurate. Like obviously you profiled him, so you thought he was important, but like, do you feel like he is a more important figure than we give credit for? And maybe even more so now that Colbert is gone and he is kind of the last person doing the kind of show that he is.
I think so, because however little late night feels like it is the new cool thing, there is still this remarkable sustained audience, particularly for those monologue segments. Mm-hmm. And they get many millions of YouTube views. He feels like it's kind of not his fault that they haven't figured out how to monetize that enormous part of the audience. But
I would agree with him. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah. The other thing he said that was really, I hadn't thought about this way before, was that so many people watch him on YouTube that he's really functionally more of a morning show than he is a late night show at this point. And if you were to set out to make a morning internet news, like comedy show, it probably wouldn't look like old school late night. And so I think he is open to the idea that the late night that he studied as a sort of Letterman obsessive and has represented for the last 2 decades is probably not what late night will look like in the next decade. But he is still, even in whatever that future evolution is, he is a real evangelist for its continued relevance.
Yeah. I mean, it is just wild that, like, I think people are just as likely to see a celebrity interview that Kimmel does as something on Hot Ones or something that's produced on YouTube. And those methods of making something are completely different, but are watched the same way and kind of have the same net effect. And we haven't really, it's such a weird period of transition that we're in the middle of, and we haven't seen what the end version looks like.
Yeah, I'm very, very curious what he would like to do after this. I think that is part of the reason the show has not ended, as I don't think he has a clear, exact image of what he wants life to look like on the other side. When I asked him that, he mostly talked about painting a sweatshirt for his wife, which was lovely.
It did sound so nice. Yeah, I want a hobby where I can just do something that doesn't involve a screen.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit about podcasts and how many podcasts are now also fulfilling that role for people. Mm-hmm. But that is a part of why I think he is loath to leave as much as he would like to, is he's aware that when he is gone, it will feel like one of the last pillars of this thing has collapsed.
Yeah, you almost like Colbert having the choice made for him. You almost see the value of that, of him getting to go out that way.
Yeah. It's a really fascinating moment for him.
I don't know how much Emmy punditry you are interested in. I'm obviously going to ask you to do some of it, but to ask in the Kimmel context, like Colbert won last year for that in that late night category, having the shows and having been announced. Do you think Kimmel gets to swoop in and take it from him after your story, obviously, but also all the news he's been in? Any predictions there?
I I would be pretty surprised if the end of Colbert doesn't get, because it still feels like more of a middle finger to Trump to give it to Colbert than it does to Kimmel. And I do think that's kind of where the impulse is going to be. But the Peabody Award for Kimmel feels like it was, a pretty... People really like being able to see him still on stage, and clapping for his ability, like really delight in standing on a stage and saying as many mean names about Trump as he possibly can. So that it does feel like it is much more in conversation this year than it has been in the past, decade.
I've always been a supporter of him as an Oscar host. I think he's done probably, but let him host things for the next 40 years. I'd be fine with it. So I did want to ask you broadly, because I, read your writing about television a lot, but I don't know how deep in the Emmy weeds that you ever get. And I think as like a TV critic, sometimes you like what you like. Your job is to get people to pay attention to things, and the awards are a sidebar. How much do you care about Emmy buzz and speculation and all this stuff that I do week after week?
I care so much less than I probably should.
I'm not here to judge.
I love listening to prognostication about it. I love sort of, as we get closer, following the narratives. I have a really terrible habit of showing up to do an Emmys high lows woes post for Vulture every year and being like, Emmys nominees 2026 Googling. My brain just cannot retain the details of your friend and mine, Joe Reed, the amount of information that he is able to keep in his head about past trends and nominees. It is like when I watch professional athletes. So it's not that I'm not interested. It's like, it's just not how my brain is good at tracking these kinds of things.
Yeah, Joe's a stats person beyond all the rest of us. But yes, there's a way that your brain works for that. I mean, you got to be on the inside of it as a part of the nominating committee for the Gothams, which is so incredibly different from how the Emmys work. And I think when we talk about it with the Oscar season with the Gothams, it's like, this isn't telling you anything about the awards. It's 5 people on a nominating committee, but it also gives you the ability to do something other awards can't, which is to sit in a room and talk about it and say, what do we want to highlight? How can we do this? And it means something. All these awards come so early. All of these people who are trying to get attention for their shows, like even the nomination feels really important there. So like, not revealing how the process works, but like, what do you learn from being in the inside of it, of either how hard it is to single things out or to remember what TV shows are on there, or like even just what you care about getting out there? Yeah,
I think it is. Those conversations are really fascinating to me. This is the second year I've done it. They're fascinating to me for a few reasons. One is just the first time you see a list and you're like, oh, this is what the field, like it just the collection of what TV has been over the last year, that it starts to force you to think about, rather than each individual show, you're like, as a group, we all very, very easily decided that this show was a no questions, we all care about this one. And then we all decide very, very easily, like, no, nobody's really up for what that is. And I think internally, you probably already, like, the reason that you can make those decisions so quickly is that you already knew that for yourself. But watching it as a group logic, I think, helps me so much sort through, like, okay, this is how obvious this is. This is how clearly never this is going to happen. And then the big middle area is where all of the interesting conversations, where people are excited about, going out on a limb. The most fascinating conversations in these nomination process conversations for me have always been like, it feels like we kind of have to. We gotta do this one. But are any of us actually excited about it? Do we actually care? And then somebody will be like, you know who we should talk about, and then the entire tale of it swings, in a different direction, and that will happen. At least one nomination out of every group that has happened, which is always like the best. Yeah.
And what I love about something like these smaller awards that happen early in the season, and with film it happens with a bunch of different critics groups, is like you bring it up and you say, hey, why not Amy Madigan for Weapons?
Yes.
And then other people say it, and then suddenly Amy Madigan has an Oscar. Like it can cause such a snowball effect. So it's a real a duty that you guys have, I think, to kind of follow that impulse.
100%. And it is also a small enough group that tone matters. Individual tone for how each of us talk about it actually matters quite a bit. And when somebody comes in super hot, people are like, oh, okay, strong. Because also critics love, we are heat-seeking missiles for strong feeling. This is what we care about more than anything else. And so when instead you have this undifferentiated group of like, sure, we all know about that. And anytime somebody says, the only reason I cared about this show was this one person, everyone goes, oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not to give away your feelings about, how this process works, but of the nominees, either that you voted on in the drama series for the Gothams or just anything, and, we have the winners now, anything you feel especially proud of being like, yes, I'm so glad that this person or this show got that moment.
Yeah. I am really, really delighted that we were able to nominate Malin Ackerman for Hunting Wives.
Yeah, we should talk about Hunting Wives.
Yeah. That group was really difficult because there's so many people from Task, there's so many people from Alien Earth, these kinds of brawnier dramas, prestige play dramas. Even Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which is sort of an interesting tonal mix, but it has been very difficult to get shows like Hunting Wives past that it's a stupid lady show wall and into
because Netflix has so many of those, right? They the Jenny and Georges of the world have made Netflix a fortune and never get taken seriously by things like this.
Yes, and because it's a Netflix show, I completely understand why viewers and critics organizations look at them and are like, okay, The Hunting Wives, it's the same as Ginny and Georgia. I can see no distinguishing qualities between them. When in fact, Hunting Wives is really great. And Ginny and Georgia, I think I once compared to Guy Fieri's trash can nachos. And so...
complimentary, sort of.
We all eat it.
They serve their purpose.
Nobody's going to be like, wow, I don't ever want to taste any of that ever. It has a role in our lives, but it's not winning James Beard Awards. You know what I'm saying? And the chance to be able to say Ackerman is not just having a fun, stupid time in this show, but is absolutely the crucial foundational element in why anything that this show is doing feels as exciting and innovative and effective as it is. She is it. And so I was really, really, really happy to be able to do that. I was also happy. I did not like The Audacity very much. I think that show is kind of a mess. But I think it only ever makes sense when Zach Galifianakis is on screen. So I was really happy that that performance made it in also.
That's a fun thing to be able to single that out, too, because I think a lot of people have a hard time with watching a show and being like, I'm kind of fed up with this, and finding the bright spot in it. Malin Ackerman and Hunting Wives, you can watch elevating it, but someone who is good in a show that's not working for you, that's a trickier thing to figure out.
It is. That show, I think, is easier to be able to identify because it is switching back and forth so much from scene to scene.
Yeah, he's in his own story for quite a long time in that show.
Yes, so you really are then, unfortunately, cognizant of all of the parts that are not him.
I like The Audacity more, but I also really like Zach Galifianakis in it. So I think that's a good choice. Well, on the I was looking through stuff you've written about and the list you guys did on Vulture, which is great, of like the best new TV shows of the year. Not technically Emmy FYC, but I read it that way. And I was thinking about The Hunting Wives, and also you tell me if I'm on kind of the wrong track with putting it next to Bridgerton as things that are like sort of taken seriously and sort of not, and things that what is very easy to put into a bucket of like this is TV but not Emmy TV. Do you see a similarity there, and what kind of advocating are you trying to do and saying like, hey, no, there's stuff to find here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is a coincidence that both of those shows are have predominantly female audiences, or at least are assumed to have predominantly female audiences. We don't have data, inside Netflix data about what that breakdown actually looks like on a granular level, but that's certainly their cultural sort of identity. And that's a tale as old as time, right? Like there's nothing new happening right there. I think there are other elements, particularly of Hunting Wives, that work against it when you try to make an argument for its seriousness. And I'm thinking particularly of how soapy it is. I don't think Bridgerton is a soapy show structurally. Like for me, soap is a inherently structural identification, because what you're talking about is storytelling based on interpersonal relationships, often to do with sex, where it is as important when new information happens as it is when other characters discover that information.
Oh, that's an interesting definition.
And the way that information moves around inside a group of characters is kind of the big soap thing for me. And I think that makes it a difficult Emmys play, because you are less likely to have these big standout, like, this is the battle scene, this is the episode where this happens, because you are just watching characters like tell each other the same thing over and over again. And
this is what a lot of Bridgerton is, isn't it? Isn't Bridgerton a lot of like secrets and maneuvering that way?
Yeah, except Bridgerton is built on a romance structure, which I want to put like a giant asterisk next to that. It is its own structural problem, but it is a different one. Hunting Wives, its soapiness is built on mystery, and there's murdery kinds of things happening in that show, and so everything feels a little more tawdry. I think Bridgerton, all of its plotting, all of its aesthetic is a fantasy inflected of female confection, and they are equally easy to dismiss in sort of different ways.
Do you think that if we'd gotten Heated Rivalry in here, because it's about boys, that they could have blown the door open on all of this and gotten the Emmys to take all this stuff more seriously?
It's fascinating, isn't it? I can't imagine a world where Heated Rivalry is a part of Emmy's conversation and it does not show up in some way.
I know.
And I do think the boysness of it is a part of that. I do think there's also just an aesthetic that it looks closer to things that get considered as...
Oh, interesting, because it looks so cheap, like famously made on a dime.
It famously looks cheap, except the thing that it looks cheap like is sports shows, and also its color palette, all of it is male skewing. Despite its really gloriously rabidly female audience.
Yeah. God, I never thought about, like, if you look enough like something that is prestige, even if you're not actually prestige, you can pull that off.
Yeah, Bridgerton looks like a tea set, and I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, Bridgerton got a drama series nomination for its first season, but it kind of had that thing that happens with, like, Yellow Jackets had some of this with the Emmys too, where it's like, oh, this is new and interesting. And then when it goes on long enough, like, it's easy for Emmy voters to be like, no, this belongs in this place. So we're going to go pay attention to something that, like, looks more like the thing that we're supposed to vote for.
Which is a shame. I love Yerenha in this season of Bridgerton. She is exquisitely good, I think. She makes that show feel grounded, which is a overused word, but her ability to it is impossible to do what she does, which is to have a character's whole internal life, Cinderella story, like this most tropey, over familiar thing, play out on her face without her really having, it's not like she gets to externalize a lot of what is going on with that character. And you buy it immediately the second she shows up. It's I think the best lead that Bridgerton has had probably since the first season.
This is a great FYC, whether you want to or not. What else do you want to throw out there that you think isn't being taken seriously enough, or you think is at risk of being forgotten that you want more people to be talking about?
I love the lowdown. I know people are, I've seen the FYC, so I'm hoping it's not like completely forgotten
out there.
But that show, I'm a Sterling Harjo fan. I think Ethan Hawke is so good in it. If anyone wins for that show, I will consider it a delayed award for The Good Lord Bird, a show that never existed in any kind of meaningful way, and yet so good. And I think about it all the time. And that is also a show that I feel like I just selfishly think will be so much better when it comes back. And so I want it to get recognition so that it has more resources so that it can really figure itself out and then be like fantastic.
I was so glad to see it got a second season because I feel like sometimes with these shows that are kind of brainy and you can't tell if they're a huge hit or not, like you never really know if they're going to come back. And FX, I guess FX has been in the Sterling Harjo business. They want to continue working with him, so there's a reason for that. But it did feel like it was not a guarantee that it was going to get another one.
I was sincerely concerned about it, and I'm thrilled that they are coming back. I still think it will be easier to continue to make that argument with external recognition because it is an FX show, and that's kind of, that's the game that they are in right now.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Among the Gotham winners, I was so thrilled to see that Michael Shannon won for Death by Lightning.
God, that show is so good.
It's so good. I feel like I've talked about it endlessly. I talked to Matthew McFadden on this podcast a couple months ago about it. And like the limited series race, there isn't a big 800-pound gorilla in it this year, I think. Like I thought it would be beef, but beef seems to have gotten more of a mixed reception. And like I would just love for Death by Lightning not to be totally forgotten.
I completely agree. Never have I seen such beards on television. Never have I seen...
Good Lord Bird had some good beards too, though.
Maybe this is the thing that really works for me. No, I mean, look, you put a bunch of guys who look like that in suits and you put them in a convention hall and you all make them argue about who should be nominated for the next presidential ticket. Like, I am all in. I am sold. Let's go. But I also think like Betty Gilpin is actually quite good as in a kind of a not particularly rewarding role. She just has to stand there and be like, how did this happen? I'm so angry.
And make it good, which is so hard to do.
Make it really great. She has a great final scene in the jail. What a good... And 4 episodes. Here's another thing.
I know.
4 episodes rather than doing like a stretched out 6. Like you are welcoming each of those new installments with such pleasure, and it never outstays its time. And yes, would love many, many more shows like that.
I assume you have the same thrill that I do of you fire up some screeners and you realize the episodes are in fact 30 minutes long. And it's like, oh my God, thank you so much.
My most recent one was my Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed, where I was like, this show could be a drag. And then I was like, oh, this show's fun. This show's snappy. It's half hour. Let's go.
I will say I wanted to talk about Widow's Bay because that feels like kind of the last show that has hit the season. I think it's a terrific show. The episodes are in like the 40-45 minute mark, and there is a moment of being like, well, it's not really a comedy, so you can stretch it on longer, but it's breaking that rule. But everything else about this show I think is working so well, and it has broken through in a way that I kind of wasn't sure shows could still do. You see that too, right?
Yes. It is one of the rare shows that I will open my timeline and see people who I don't know talking about. I also think it's able to do horror without. I'm a scaredy cat. I don't particularly love jump scares, especially, and it is. You can sell it to the non-horror people and they will come away actually glad that you did, which is, huge. I think Matthew Rhys has always been an incredible comedic actor, and this lets him own the elements of his face that look like he, is the most evil thing you've ever seen. Like something about the angles of his eyes and his jaw, if you light it correctly, I mean, this is what Beast in Me was about. If you light it correctly, you will believe that guy will kill everyone in the room. But not a lot of people have the ability to sort of hold themselves like that, hold their expressions like that, and then occasionally you're like...
to be terrified but also hilarious at the same time. Like I can't really even figure out what he's doing half the time, but it's so satisfying on both levels.
Yeah, the thing is that he is actually in a kind of Tim Robinson mode in that show where everyone else is in one world and he at the center of it is just desperately trying to have that world be different than it is. And the way that they'll never be able to bridge between those things is where Widow's Bay gets so much of its juice. I also think that show so wisely casts all these weird indie comedians. Chris Fleming, who I also profiled this year, is great as a shaman in it. Connor Ratliff is in it. It is... Yeah, a delight to watch.
I want to throw this out now. Speaking of prognostication, I was kind of looking at the comedy actor field this year where you've got like Only Murders is back and The Bear is back and Shrinking is back, and it feels kind of ripe for disruption. And I'm just kind of looking at Matthew Rhys and thinking like he's already got an Emmy. He's in the mix. He's probably going to get nominated for The Beast in Me also. I'm kind of prepared for him to run it. But you also want the supporting cast to come get swept in with him too.
Yeah, I don't know how Apple makes decisions. I think most of us assume that it's because Tim Cook just likes certain things.
I guess so.
That's certainly what's happening with For All Mankind, and God bless him. And I am hoping that any kind of recognition for that show will just mean... Actually, there's this thing about kids programming, particularly kids programming in New York, where it feels like it is kind of a long-term employment process for weird indie comedians. They can just always go and be on, Sesame Street or whatever Apple Kids show is happening. You're like, oh, it's Joe Firestone. That's so great. And I think Widow's Bay should also be in that.
Oh my God, that's true. Everyone, did they film it like outside of Boston somewhere? I assume it has like authentic New England vibes.
Yeah, I actually don't know. Would love to know.
Yeah. Well, wherever it is that they're filming, they can all, Jeff Hiller can go have his little coastal home and we'll all be thrilled for as long as the show wants to run.
Please.
Well, Kathryn, thank you for coming to talk to me about television. Good luck with making it through the rest of it. I got to watch Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed. I'm trying to follow all of your instructions. So a lot of watching ahead for me. And please come back soon. There's always so much more TV to talk about.
Yeah. I have this new podcast with my friend Alan Sepinwall.
Please plug. Yes.
Yeah. We've been doing, it's called TV is Good. We talk about Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed. To be clear, we don't always talk about TV that we think is good, although because sometimes it's fun to, but we're talking about Vampire Lestat. Like that is an interesting show that I feel like is never going to be an Emmys conversation, but maybe what?
No, they're airing into the summer on purpose. But
I know.
It seems like the perfect spot for it.
It does. And that show, TV is Good is not designed to be an Emmys conversation, largely because I can't ever keep track of what is happening in the Emmys conversation.
No,
but it is designed for two TV critics who have a surprisingly narrow Venn diagram of shared interests to try to talk to each other about television. Be like, really? Really? Okay. All right. Love Island? Okay. All right. Okay.
I look forward to listening to you and Alan Sepinwall neg each other about your taste of TV, and everyone should listen to. For those of you listening to this now, stay tuned. I'll be back in a moment with my conversation with Jason Bateman. This podcast is supported by Netflix, presenting The Diplomat. The drama series returns with tested alliances, new characters, and potentially catastrophic consequences. Starring actor award winner Kerry Russell, alongside incredible performances from lead actor Rufus Sewell and supporting actors Allison Janney and Bradley Whitford. Variety lauds it, the finest chapter of The Diplomat to date. With outstanding writing from Deborah Kahn, Decider calls it a masterclass in storytelling. And AFI raves, The Diplomat ascends to the highest office in television in its third term. For your Emmy Awards consideration. Now let's hear my conversation with Jason Bateman. As you have probably noticed, he is very busy on TV these days. But in this conversation, we are particularly focusing on Black Rabbit. He is the star of the show alongside Jude Law and also directed the first 2 episodes. That's a role he played on Ozark for several seasons. And as he tells me in our conversation, it really means you get to set the entire tone and direction for the series, which is something he has relished doing. His career as a TV director probably goes back further than you realize. He directed some multicam sitcoms back in the 90s, as well as an episode of Arrested Development. But it was really after he started directing feature films that TV brought him back in. We talk in our conversation about what made him want to be a director on Ozark, what he learned from that experience that he brought to Black Rabbit, and just how he's learned to work with actors as an actor himself, but also the director. We talk about all the logistics he loves about TV directing, why he wants to work even harder on set than the actors have to, and also where he's going to take his directing work as he moves forward. It's really interesting to talk to someone who is pretty well known, but about a totally different aspect of his career. So hear all of that and much more in my conversation with the star and director of Black Rabbit, Jason Bateman. I believe the idea is to talk about Black Rabbit, but mostly about your directing work on it, which is fun because I feel like I haven't heard you talk about that as much in as many of your interviews about it. But was listening to one of them where you basically said the creators of Black Rabbit kind of came to you and said, can you do on this show what you did on Ozark? And I'm curious about what you think that meant. Like, what was it that you did on Ozark that you think that they wanted or that they told you they wanted that you brought over to this?
Well, traditionally, or I should say up until about, 10, 15 years ago, the typical sort of oversight position that a director has on a feature film was the world of the executive producer / head writer / showrunner in television.
Yeah.
And that the episodic director was, always working sort of in deference to the showrunner. But about 15 years ago, as streaming stuff started to become a bit more cinematic, they started looking for feature directors or directors that had a bit more of an auteur type of angle to what they were doing. And that dynamic kind of transitioned a bit or shifted a little bit. And by the time we got to Ozark, that was the type of director they were looking for in that. They certainly weren't looking for me as a director on that. They were shooting for people considerably bigger and better than me with oodles of experience. But I managed to talk my way into that. And because I directed a couple of sort of festival level films and was looking to take on something a bit bigger with a bit more responsibility and scope and schedule, et cetera, et cetera. And so directing a television show was not something that I was looking to do because of what I had mentioned. But I said to the folks there at Ozark, listen, if you let me direct all of these, that would represent the kind of escalation and responsibility and challenge that I'm kind of looking for in the feature world as a director. And because Cary Fukunaga had just done it incredibly well on True Detective, and so that challenge, that sort of challenge to direct a 500-page movie effectively, was something that was really exciting to me.
It is crazy to me that you embraced that as a child. That's so hard. I just cannot believe you wanted to jump right into that.
It's very masochistic, but as I've joked before, I have addiction issues, and so I'm channeling them into something a bit healthier than what was 20 some years ago. So I managed to talk them into that. I didn't end up being able to direct all of them for schedule and budget and all that other stuff, but just because of time when I say budget.
Yeah.
But the oversight position that I had there was much more similar to a director on a film in that I was doing everything on the ground, whereas my partner through that, Chris Mundy, was doing the writing back in Los Angeles, and he had, he was the auteur there. I was the auteur on set, and sort of the duties were sort of bifurcated, and we had some overlap on certain things that I wanted to sort of create, but he was perfect for the job. I was looking for somebody that was going to be comfortable treating this working dynamic much like a feature.
And like a partnership, and not there's one boss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well. And if I was going to do another streaming thing, that would be the dynamic that I'd want to repeat. And so when Zach and Kate and Jude brought this to me, they were fans of Ozark. And I said, well, just so that you know what that was, what the creative dynamic was there as far as power separation and creative lanes, it was what I just described.
Yeah.
And they said, great, we're totally comfortable with that. They were coming from features, so their idea of what they would be doing on a set in their mind would be like they were doing on film, which is, the writer is at times there, but isn't often there. They did want to be there, but they were comfortable taking a position, not a passive position by any stretch, because we were, very in lockstep creatively throughout, but that the buck would stop with the person that is directing all the episodes. Again, in my case, I couldn't direct them all because I was also acting in it, so I wasn't able to prep ahead of time because they sort of, you hopscotch there, two. But I would hire all the directors that come through, and as directing the first two, you set all the locations, you set the look of it, you cast all the characters, Zach and Kate and I talked long and hard about what those remaining 6 episodes would be, how the story would roll out. And so that is kind of what we discussed Ozark was and what this would be, and would they be comfortable with that? And thankfully they said yes, and off we went, and it was a fantastic working experience with them. They were very comfortable with me kind of delivering it.
Yeah. I mean, that transition you're talking about of how TV changed that's what the director focusing is one of the ways that TV has changed so much in the last 30 or so years. And it's something you've witnessed just having worked on TV, but also as a director. You had directed some television before you directed an episode of Arrested Development. It sounds like your feature work is more of what led into what you're doing now, but I'm just kind of curious about having been on both sides of what television was 30 years ago versus what it is now. Do you take anything with you from that into making something like Black Rabbit?
Yeah, the early directing for me in television was in multicam, because that's where I was coming from. That's where my sort of influence and capital was. And really, I was interested in kind of becoming the next Jimmy Burrows, who's one of our greatest multicam directors ever, incredibly accomplished and basically directed every show you've ever loved in front of a studio audience. And I was looking to kind of turn that into an asset as opposed to kind of the speed bump that it was presenting for me as television comedy was transitioning into single camera. I was kind of getting thrown out with the bathwater, and I wanted to, still continue to make a living. And then Arrested Development came along, and that was a single camera show, and ended up directing one of those. And so the single camera directing bubble had been popped for me, and was looking to do more and more and more of that. But as we were talking about before, the role of a director in television nowadays is much more similar to the director in features as it was traditionally kind of set up as the person that is shaping all things from pre-production to principal to post. There's an excitement for a singularity of, pardon the term, vision and execution, as opposed to a bit more of a committee, which was how it was set up in the past, with the EP taking the lead, and then having the studio and the network also be at the table, and it ended up creating a bit more of a homogenized product for the audience, because the number of voices that are there at the table, just the edges, kind of by definition, they just get kind of rounded off because you've got so many voices chiming in.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Ozark is, it wasn't the first streaming show, but it was kind of one of the ones that started to set up like, this is what a streaming show can look like. This is what you can get away with. This is what you can do differently. And you directed, I think, the first 2 episodes of 3 of the seasons, and, the setting of the tone that you're talking about. So going into Black Rabbit, is there something that you say, all right, we didn't know if we could get away with this in Ozark, but we did. So now we're going to push it in this direction. How do you build on that knowledge of having pulled it off that time and now moving on to something else?
Well, I realize that you can kind of teach the audience how to watch the show with the decisions that you make aesthetically, narratively. With Netflix, you have this opportunity to have your audience watch a bunch in one sitting, which allows you to be a bit more economical with your expositional moments in the script. You don't need to repeat as many things as you might if you're on a weekly, a rolling air date type of thing. With the way in which you light something, I like things a bit darker. I like a key side and a fill side on someone's face as opposed to, something flatter. And so your audience learns, well, I can't watch this show during the day because I can't see shit. I got to wait until it's dark and there's no ambient light in the room so I can, see the fill side of this actor's face. I get that's frustrating.
Tell everyone to buy better televisions. They got to get all the good darks in place.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's that, but it's the lighting that I really love started in film, and with film, you've got a pristine and predictable dark environment to watch everything. There's no windows in a movie theater. Your only source of light is that screen, so you can really shape things in a really cinematic way that is not just sort of jerk off sort of look how pretty everything can look. It actually can help tell a story, with the way in which you create composition and where your light is coming in and what it's illuminating, what's in the shadows, what do you wish you could see more, and on and on and on. So I like that. I realize that the audience can figure out what type of show this is, what type of show it isn't, and what would be the best time for me to watch it, and on what device. This is something that I shouldn't watch on my iPhone. I should watch it on the biggest TV we've got in the house, and make sure the settings are right and all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about film influences in terms of the looks. In this show, you've got these brothers who are named Friedkin. That feels like a pretty clear nod. William Friedkin, what are the other film influences for you going into how this is going to look? Are you sitting everyone down and watching a certain movie for the tone or the style or anything else? How are you spinning off of that?
Yeah, I mean, a real central reference for us, comp for us, was Uncut Gems. I'm a big Safdie brothers fan, and while I'm nowhere near their talent, that was a sort of a North Star for us to try to kind of march towards. And that's a bit of an exhausting experience in a good way, Uncut Gems, but it's only 2 hours and you can kind of catch your breath after that. This was going to be 8 hours, and we knew we'd need to sort of throttle off every once in a while. But as far as the general look and feel, aesthetic of the show, the environment, it would be reflective of the unsettled place that these two main characters find themselves. So, again, what's the visual, math of that? Is it, is it camera on the dolly or is it handheld? And if it's not on a dolly, if it is handheld, is it on a steady cam, or, is it on a Movi? Is it like there's different apparatuses that give you a different feel to give the audience, hopefully, an unconscious feeling of things not being kind of buttoned up, that these guys don't really know where they're going or what the right decision might be. The foundation is not that solid under them. And there's always something in the foreground that we're looking through, because there's no real clear shot at the answer for them in a lot of. So there are many films that qualify to sort of help support all of that. What's the color temperature? Things that are super saturated feel a little bit more safe than things that are a little bit more desaturated. What's the level of grain that you want to put over the image? Because these digital sensors give you a very clean, tight, crisp sort of image that again feels a little bit kind of safe. And so there's a bunch of things that go up to hopefully kind of bring the audience more than halfway there, such that the actors can afford to do a little bit less, because the goal is not to see any acting. And what kind of water is the music going to be playing downstream that the actors aren't aware of, that I can articulate to them? Like, we don't need as much emotion in the scene because I've got this cue that's going to come in there that's really going to take over, and I'm actually going to drop the dialogue out there, and the music's going to really take over. So we don't need to see as much there. There's different stuff that goes into it. Sometimes actors like to hear that stuff and know what's going on and know the size that the camera is photographing them in, so they know not to play the nervousness with the character in the hands because it's under frame, and pick something else to, is it something with your face. And I like to communicate all this stuff to the extent the actor wants to hear it. I've always found it helpful as an actor, and probably why I was drawn to directing, because it's for me it's a lot more complicated and challenging and fulfilling. Yeah.
So I want to talk about how the locations play into a lot of what you're talking about, because you've got this location where the Black Rabbit is. It is like the most incredible, beautiful South Street Seaport building that all I could think about was what a nightmare it would be to run a restaurant in a building that old, like with all those stairs and all of that stuff. And I assume you have a set, but there's probably some element of that as well, of trying to shoot something in the space that tight. And so I want to talk about that, but there's a contrast of the poker game that's in this high-rise office building that looks exactly like my old office building in downtown Manhattan. That's like the most sterile, weird place to put a poker game. So in those first 2 episodes, you're choosing these locations, you're figuring out that look. How are you figuring out what your version of New York is going to be? You could pick buildings that look like anything. Why were those them?
Well, one of the inspirations for the story that Kate and Zach wrote was A Spotted Pig, which was a really famous restaurant / night spot that they lived near there in the West Village. And that restaurant went through some of the things that the Black Rabbit kind of went through. It's a bit of amalgamation of a few different restaurants, but that was one of the big influences. And so just kind of in our own heads, we were kind of had that place, running as a reference. And so as we were looking for a location, ideally we'd find a place that kind of looked a bit like the Spotted Pig. It didn't need to be, but that would be kind of cool. And here comes this place that is almost an exact replica of the Spotted Pig. And frame left, you've got the Brooklyn Bridge, that's like, was almost too cinematic, such that I really had to frame it out of a lot of shots because it almost just didn't look real. Or even if it did look real, if you had some, jerk like me watching, I was trying to avoid that jerk saying like, "We got it, guy. You found a good location next to the bridge. We don't need to see it in every shot." So that was really fortunate that we ended up finding that place, and it was in, deep disrepair. Hurricane Sandy really did a number on that place, and so it really hadn't bounced back and was not in operation, which was also fortunate for us because if you pick a location that's actually in service, you have to buy it for the days that you're using it, which means you have to cover all the money that they would be making that day on top of the rental fee. It gets very expensive. So the fact that this place was unoccupied was really helpful. And also its level of disrepair inside was helpful for flashback where I take Jake to go see this place and say, open your mind, see the vision here, what we can make in this restaurant. So we left it, crappy, so it could work for that flashback. But as a consequence, we had to build the entire inside of it on a couple of sound stages at Steiner across the river there in Brooklyn. And that was a great process to go through with our production designer, Alex C. Gerlando. He put together some incredible reference photos that really covered the gamut, or sort of English pubs and sort of like Keith Richards' house and, Spotted Pig and like Freeman's Alley and all these great sort of Lower East Side quintessential textured New York hotspots that worked for the various levels there. The VIP room looked different than the second floor restaurant, different than the first floor restaurant. And it was really fun to build that set, and our construction crew was incredible the way they put that. It was a 2-story set there on that stage in Steiner, and then the third floor was built on another stage next door. But it was practical, staircase going through there, and we tried to incorporate that into as many shots as we could to really kind of show off the work that this construction crew had done and what the art department had put together.
But you had to be glad you weren't shooting in an actual 3-story building. Like, I just cannot imagine the logistics of trying to do that with cameras and everything else.
Yeah, it was, but look, I mean, since we did build a practical 2-story structure there on that stage, we did have to jackass all the equipment up and down those stairs. There was a bigger set of stairs on the back of the set there and some lifts that did make it a bit easier for sure. You're right. But, it was pretty real. And then that poker game, that was scripted as taking place in an office space that is unoccupied because of COVID. And, that is a sad truth to a lot of the sort of commercial real estate nationwide, worldwide. And that office space had been repurposed for one of these sort of traveling sort of pirate high-end poker games that I guess exist.
Yeah, well, if you ever go in the Vanity Fair offices in New York, I feel like it looks exactly like that. So
is that right?
I'll never see it quite the same way again. I
don't know how you get work done in there with those views.
That's true. It's hard when it's cloudy. It's easier. So talking to you about all this, it's clear that the logistics, the problem solving, the talking to all the different departments is a big part of directing that you really love. I'm curious if that's kind of the main thing that keeps you going back to it, or if there's a creative part that you get to it, either talking to the writers or working with the actors that kind of sparks you with directing and makes you want to keep coming back and solving all these problems and having so much responsibility every day.
Yeah, I mean, the problem solving is absolutely fun. But of course, the creative side of it is what drives the whole thing because, creating fake life is a really fun challenge. It's sneaky tough to create an environment that is believable for the audience and then trying to shape the moments that spike inside of this real world. I mean, creating a real world is 90% of the work and you get no credit for it, just that it just looks believable. and we don't see the mic dipping into the shot, and that you don't see off the set, and that, you know, like all of that stuff takes work to choreograph, and you just, that's a lot of the work. The other 10% is the part that is the entertainment part of it, whether it's dramatic or comedic. So finding out how to deliver that to an audience in a way that is compelling and effective for millions and millions of people that all have had a different day today, and they don't know one another, and they're all in different moods when they sit down either in a theater or in their living room to watch something. And the challenge of, from the first image and the first sound they hear, to try to funnel all of those different lives, minds, moods into a shared and similar, hopefully identical experience, is like an enormous creative challenge that I love, and that all of the people I work with hopefully love as well, including obviously the actors that, you know, are reliant on the way in which I choose to photograph them and support them with music and light them and edit them. Do I want the camera to stay behind after they're done talking to watch that character listen to the response to what they just said? And what does that do for the audience that's watching to sort of ingratiate them into that character's experience versus the other person that's doing the talking now? Like, all of these decisions go into trying to provide the eyes and the ears and the heart of the audience. And that being one set of eyes, one set of ears, one heart that the audience is living. And that's like, yes, there's a mathematical portion to that, but there's also just an instinctual, just human portion to that is a separate challenge to maintain objectivity on as you go through the editorial process and try to trick yourself into seeing it for the first time every single time you're looking at a little adjustment that you're making and trying to predict where the audience is at that moment. And I just love all that. It's you know, it sounds really grandiose to say this, so I apologize. I wish I had another way to say it, but it's kind of like God stuff, you know, like you're climbing inside millions of people's bodies, brains, and hearts, and providing an experience for them, which only really God does to everybody in their regular day when they're walking around, you know? So it's an enormous responsibility. It's an enormous challenge, and getting a chance to work with people that are equally enthused by it and that are enormously talented with the way in which they run their departments and write material and perform material is just like the greatest position in the world to be someone that is, whose job it is to gather all of those efforts and put them into one project.
Yeah. I mean, I love the way you talk about turning the audience into kind of one being, because so often when we talk about modern audiences, it's like everyone's fractured, everyone's watching different things, there's no monoculture anymore, you can't get everyone to pay attention to something. And I wonder if you think about audiences differently, if you think there is more of a unifying thing about the way people watch things and enjoy things and what they want than maybe what we assume by how widespread entertainment can be these days.
Yeah, I'm as cynical as the next person, but I'm not too banged up about that. I really do think that it's impossible for I don't care what sort of way you lean on the political spectrum, or whether you've had a tough upbringing or a privileged one. Everybody has that small little guy inside them still, you know. Women always have a little tiny girl in them. Men always have a little tiny boy in them. It's the part you go to sleep with. It's the part you wake up with, and it's your most private place. It is the base of who you are. It's your truest person, and if you can tap into that as a director, as an actor, as a writer, composer, if somehow you can set that hook, you've got them. And it's a huge responsibility once you do have them to not drop them, because whether the audience knows it or not, they're making a big investment in you. They're letting you spend time with that part of them. And that part is universal. Everybody has that. And there are many different doors into that area for people, but not a lot. There's a few evergreen sort of paths to that place in people, and in every genre, there are some tried and true sort of keys in there. In every department, there's some tried and true tools that we use to not manipulate the audience, but just sort of gently knock and ask permission to come in. And hopefully you've done your work early on in the project where that audience member feels like they're in good hands and they let you in. And then it's up to you not to drop them.
Well, and you're not dropping them, but you're not giving anyone an easy ride. Like Black Rabbit has a lot of tough stuff. Ozark obviously did. It's not like you want everyone to feel like perfectly swaddled while they're watching your work, but it's like they trust you, I guess is what that means.
Yeah, and it's there's nothing exciting about watching a person who's got it all together. So usually a character, whether it's a drama or a comedy, has got some fissures in that shell, in that veneer, and as is the case with Black Rabbit, both of those lead characters are very difficult to like and to root for. But hopefully you gain some empathy for them, hopefully early on, as folks that they just don't have the same level of coping skills that you and I have. The people who are in a safe living room watching this on their television set, that have made the right decisions such that they're able to, afford a subscription to Netflix and spend some time watching some entertainment. Like, these guys are running so fast, they probably don't ingest a lot of entertainment. So you have to break a character a little bit to make them interesting. And hopefully there's some elements in the writing and in the performance that show you that these characters would love to be less broken. And maybe this is the journey we're going to watch where they are going to find some sort of redemption, some sort of lesson that is going to finish them in a better place by the time we're done. And the journey will have been worth it, because we will see this person rehabilitated in some sense, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. That's kind of what we're looking for, I think, as an audience member. I certainly am. And the more sort of challenging, it is at the beginning, the more I'm kind of in. I'm like, okay, you're asking me to fall in love with an axe murderer? Let's see it. And then if you get me there, if you get me to a place where I'm empathizing with a serial killer, that's really impressive. And I feel bad about myself that I'm feeling bad for a serial killer. But then it's like, wow, this piece of entertainment was really effective, and how cool that was. Bravo. That was a fun ride. I didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah. But before I let you go, I think you had said in a different interview that your goal is to still direct all the episodes of a TV season, which sounds, again, incredibly hard. This is a challenge you can't walk away from. Is that still part of the plan? You're going to figure out how to make logistics work to do a full season from beginning to end?
Yeah, we're developing a few things at my company that would probably be a good candidate for that. It's less episodes than 10 and 8. In the case of Black Rabbit, it's probably more like 7 or 6, maybe 5. DTF was 7. Steve Conrad did an incredible job directing all those episodes and writing all those episodes. I mean, he's just a beast. It's just one of the most incredibly talented people I've ever worked with. So that was inspiring to see him do that and manage that tone and the complexity of the structure of those scripts. And then for him to, make it even more complicated in a great way in the editing process. It got even less linear. So I'm really more inspired now than I've ever been to try to take it on. It's, I can't come home on the weekends when I'm directing because you're first one in, last one out. And I've still got a 14-year-old at home. So I might have to wait until she goes to college before my wife and I take off to do something like that. But we'll see. It's definitely a challenge I want to take on at some point.
This is how people wind up hiring their kids as like PAs or give them like set jobs so everybody can keep the family together.
I'm looking at my 19-year-old over here in the production office. She's my assistant on this project, so we're together for this. The 14-year-old, the 14-year-old she's interested in acting. I don't know if that's gonna last with her, but right now she seems really into it. So maybe, and she's good. Maybe she ends up being the lead in this multi-episode thing that I do, and now we're together the whole time. But then what does she do about school? You know, it's like you can't have it all. I'm patient if nothing else.
Can't have it all, but we get to keep trying, and that's the best that we can do. That does it for today's episode. We'll have another bonus episode of the podcast coming this Saturday, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, this podcast is edited by Brett Fox and produced by Brett Fox and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thanks again to my co-host today, Kathryn van Arendonk. Subscribe to the Prestige Junkie newsletter at theanchor.com and subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. We will see you on Saturday.